Hello everyone and welcome to round 8 at Fuji for the Nations Cup. I'm Chris Cavaney, your host for the series, and now we have departed from the European leg of the Nations Cup and we enter into the Asian sector, and where better to be than at Fuji Speedway. 4 races are coming your way today, 2 from Division 2 and 2 from Division 1, and where better to start than Division 2. And what we can do is look at the standings going into this race, and we can see that Pato Award has a somewhat healthy lead of 14 points to Kevin Magnussen in second place. We have Felix Rosenqvist in third with 91 points, Sebastian Buemi close in behind there as well, tied with Arthur Leclerc on 81 points, Will Power on 79 points for Australia, Robert Wickens of Canada for 73, Felipe Albuquerque and Antonio Felix Acosta next on 70 and 68. It's going down the order of Antonio Giovinazzi, Lundgaard, Whincup and Nasser all vying to get some points for the title. And then we have Raffaele Marcello, the teammate of Switzerland's Sebastian Buemi, who's been struggling a little bit, but hopefully he can gain some ground on 57 points. Stefan Rakelmi, who's been basically wanting to go into the pits every race, he's on 51 right now. Marcus Ericsson on 39, Sasa Fenstras 38, with Roman De Angelis on 38, Leonardo Fornaroli on 36, Kevin van der Linde 35, Antonio Fuoco 34, Van der Linde. Sheldon Van der Linde, that is, on 25. Nico Verone has been a rather disappointing season for him on 19. James Hinchcliffe on 18. Rafael Camara on 13. Mahavira Gunnathan on 10 points. And with Bruno Senna with 9. Rafael Villagomez with 3. Faki Regelli on 2. And Lorraine Carter-Kane still being the only driver with 0. And we can now see what that looks like for the nation standings going into this race. And Denmark are leading on 156 points. 15 ahead of Australia in second place, Switzerland in third, tied with Portugal, 138 points, but they're ahead due to their finishing positions. Italy in fifth, Monaco in sixth, and Sweden in seventh place. All very, very close bunch there, with Canada as well, just outside of Mexico in 110 points, Brazil in 83 points, South Africa in 60, Argentina in 59, and then India with 10. And there are no driver changes to report, so we can go straight into it and show you the grids for the very first race of today, which is the Division 2 Sprint. Jimmy Whincup starts on pole with Roman De Angelis next to him in second place, Will Power, Jimmy's compatriot, in third place, Sebastian Buemi, title contender, fourth place, ahead of Robert Wickens in fifth, Antonio Felix Acosta in sixth, Antonio Giovinazzi, the first of Italy, in seventh place, Raffaele Marcello, who is a wingman of Sebastian Buemi, in eighth place, Pato Award in ninth. He's going to want to gain some points, especially with Felix Rosenqvist next to him, who's going to be vying to steal some points. Marcus Ericsson in 11th place, alongside Antonio Fuoco in 12th, Arthur Leclerc 13th, Felipe Albuquerque 14th, Felipe Nasser and Rafael Camara in 15th and 16th respectively. Stefan Rakelmi in 17th place, Kevin Magnussen, woeful qualifying for him in 18th, Kelvin van der Linde in 19th, Christian Lundgaard, another woeful qualifying for Denmark there in 20th, Nico Verone 21st, Sheldon van der Linde 22nd, Rafael Villagomez 23rd, Sasha Fenstras 24th, and both the India cars, Gunnathan and Carter-Kane 25th and 26th. So, for the first race of the day, I hand you to Ryan Ferris for the sprint.
Round 8 Division 2 sprint race here in Fuji, and it's Jamie Whincup on pole from De Angelis in second. Now, who is going to be first into that long run into turn 1? And they're away, and it's a good start from Whincup, and De Angelis also getting a good start as well. Few movers and shakers in the background are going 3 abreast in the background. Who's this going down the inside? It's Buemi into second. So Sebastian Buemi comes through into second position, slots in between the 2 Australian cars, so Powers had a good start and managed to get through on De Angelis. So Buemi from actually quite a way back, actually, getting that second position. Marcello in 5th position. Now, importantly, Pato Award Championship leader is in 11th position, so he is the one to look out for at the moment. And Rakelmi from Monaco is saying part of his wing is missing, so he's going to have to get his way back to pit lane and have the front wing repaired. So Whincup leading. Obviously Rosenqvist, another driver to keep an eye on in terms of championship standings as they come round the final corner and down this very long straight, the longest straight on the calendar, I believe, to complete the first lap of this sprint race. So Whincup, Buemi, Power, De Angelis and Marcello are the top 5 at the moment. Here's looking back at Giovinazzi, and in the background that is Marcello going through on De Angelis for 4th position, so looking like a great start so far for the Swiss team. Now he is going to go after Will Power. Team Australia, who have managed to find some traction in the second part of this season so far, and definitely seems to be working good for them at the moment with 1st and 3rd. Come around here is Robert Wickens trying to look up the inside of De Angelis, and De Angelis closing the door. It's going to put him under threat from Rosenqvist, who is going to try and see how many positions he can make up. Obviously ahead of O'Ward at the moment, so going to be making a points gain. Further down the back of the field, that's Sheldon van der Linde, and also Noreen Carthagena, who started on the back row of the grid, and that's Villa Gomez already with what looks to be a potential water leak. So only 1.5 laps completed, and we've potentially got our first retirement already. Here's Robert Wickens again, having another look on De Angelis. They're side by side coming down into turn 1. And that is job done for Wickens. So Wickens up to 5th. Here's O'Ward. Managed to make his way into 10th. So 1 point at the moment. But as you can see there, a possible worry with his teammate going out so soon in this race. Come round and down the hill. There's Villa Gomez finally pulling off the track. And out of the race, Riquelme bringing up the rear, obviously having to pit for a new front wing. That's Marcello having a bit of a lock up through into the chicane. A very, very tight and twisty low speed chicane, and it's does have a bit of a concertina effect, and it can be a bit of a pain for the drivers. Here's De Angelis, and De Angelis has managed to get back through on Wickens, so whilst we were looking away at Villa Gomez retiring, De Angelis has got back through on his Canadian counterpart. And not even in the slipstream is he able to do anything. Here's Pato O'Ward making moves. So O'Ward now up into 9th position and is getting very, very close to Rosenqvist now. So Rosenqvist is going to want to get the job done soon on the 2 Canadian cars ahead. Whincup being encouraged along in 1st position by the team. He's got Boemi 1.6 seconds behind. Here's Wickens again, under pressure by Rosenqvist. There's Leclerc having a slight lock-up on the exit of the chicane. Down the start-finish straight for Leclerc. 11th position at the moment, under pressure from camera, although not too under pressure, but there's a large gap appearing between himself and Da Costa. Da Costa in the final points paying position. Who's that going up into? That's Giovinazzi through on Rosenqvist. So Rosenqvist dilly-dallying a little bit too much, trying to get past Wickens, and now the Italian is through. So that means Rosenqvist and O'Ward are now together for 8th and 9th. Down the hill one more time to the Dunlop chicane. Here's Will Power, sandwiched in between the 2 Swiss cars. Here's Wickens, claiming he's being held up there Obviously, didn't quite see what happened as a result of him losing that position back to his teammate. But he still feels he's the faster of the two. Still, it's Whincup who's gradually extending that advantage to Buemi as he comes across the line once again to complete 5 of the 17 laps. And the gap is now up to 1.9 seconds, so gradually getting away from the Swiss driver. Power not too far away, and he's very close to picking up a fairly decent slipstream. Here's Fenestraz holding on in front of Karthikeyan. The two Argentine cars struggling down the back end with the Indian car. Raghunathan's actually managed to make up a few positions and is up to 20th. It is Antonio Felix da Costa in 10th position, and a lock-up there has allowed Leclerc to catch up onto the back of him. Now, is he going to be close enough to be within the slipstream? It definitely looks like Leclerc is a lot closer now as a result of that. Down the start-finish straight they come one more time to complete 6 laps. But Leclerc not close enough, I don't think, to challenge into turn 1. Now back at the front, and that definitely looks like Marcello's starting to get a little bit closer now to power. And as I said that, Leclerc is actually close enough to have a little bit of a look, but not close enough to put on a move. So Jamie Whincup still in the lead and still gradually eking out the lead to Buemi. It's now 2.1 seconds. Chicane. No real issues there as Alpha Leclerc goes up the inside now, and that is 10th position, or is it? No! Da Costa hangs it on round the outside and holds on to that 10th position. That's allowed Ericsson to catch up onto the back of Leclerc, and Whincup has a lock-up! Whincup locks up into the final corner. That's going to allow Buemi a little bit closer, but not too much closer. We'll see what the gap is as they come across the line. So it was 2.1, it is now 1.8, so has lost a few tenths there, but still nothing major. As long as he hasn't damaged his tyres too much there, he should be okay for the rest of the race. We have 10 laps remaining. Leclerc still unable to find a way past Da Costa. And this is allowing Ericsson onto the back end. To complete another sector. How is it looking between Whincup and Buemi? Does Buemi smell blood with that lock-up from Whincup? They come through the tight and twisty chicane, and it is Whincup who's managed to pull out another couple of tenths. So normal service resumed for the Australian. Still, Leclerc still seeing if he can find a way through on the Portuguese driver ahead. Start finish again. Leclerc frustrated. He definitely feels he's faster than Da Costa ahead, and he's pretty much shown that so far, but he's just not getting close enough in the right places to perform a move. And there's yellows as it's Will Power. Will Power is out from 3rd position. So Willpower retires, and I'm assuming that's a transmission failure, as I can't see much wrong there. Is that a loose wheel? No, it definitely is the dreaded transmission failure. So Power out of third position. That promotes Marcello into third, De Angelis into fourth, and Wickens into fifth. Still, Rosenquist and in seventh and O'Ward in eighth. So the two main people to look out for at the moment. And that's a lock up there from Wickens. So Wickens, who's been complaining that his teammate De Angelis isn't going quickly enough, he's still not managing to find a way through. That's put him back into the clutches of Antonio Fuoco. Sasha Fenestraz further down the order in 22nd position. Now, interestingly, second place in the championship at the moment is Magnussen. He's down in 18th. Lundgaard also in 16th. So they're struggling here in Fuji after having the double last time out in Monza. It all appears to have come crashing down, and here's Leclerc going down the inside into turn one. And that looks like job done there for the Monegasque driver. Finally, on lap 10, is through. But he's got a bit of work to do now to catch up onto the back of O'Ward. But looks like Da Costa's not quite finished yet. Further on, and Whincup still extending his advantage to Buemi. And that's Felipe Albuquerque trying to find a way through on camera. And that's a lock up there for Sheldon van der Linde. Not going too well for Team South Africa today. Both cars outside the points at the moment. Out front still pulling away. 2.3 is the gap. 10 laps completed. 7 to go. But Whincup has just got to hope no technical gremlins come his way like his teammate Power. Here's Felipe Nasr in 15th position. He's chasing down Albuquerque, who is also in turn chasing down his fellow countryman Camara. So Brazil still both cars outside the points. Nasr with a little lock up there down at the Dunlop chicane. Come rounding these final corners. Very technical, the final sector of this Fuji circuit. Here's Rosenquist down the inside of Giovinazzi, so that is 6th position. O'Ward is going to try and see if he can follow on through. With Raffaele Marcello, it has a comfortable gap ahead of De Angelis. Still a little too far away from Buemi, and Buemi just a little bit too far away from Whincup at the moment, so Everything holding on station. Giovinazzi under pressure now from O'Ward. O'Ward harassing him round these final corners. Down this start-finish straight. Will O'Ward have the drive? Down this long straight. Hopefully cut back to it very shortly, although Giovinazzi will be getting a tow from Rosenquist ahead. But here's O'Ward down the inside of Giovinazzi. No, not quite close enough. All the while, this is allowing Rosenquist to pull the car length here and there. And Rosenquist chasing down Robert Wickens for 5th position. So still on board with the Swiss driver. Of Marcello, this is Buemi. So Buemi still losing out a little bit to Whincup. But this is so far a strong performance from Team Switzerland. Although still wouldn't be holding the breath yet, as we saw in Monza with only a couple laps to go. Marcello had the loose wheel, costing Switzerland some valuable points. Whincup still extending that advantage to 2.8 seconds. Here's Karthikeyan, who's far down the back of the field. It's only Riquelme who's behind, who's obviously had to pit for that front wing repair. But the two Argentinian cars are becoming a speck in the distance for the India car, which, interestingly, obviously they had that turn of form a few races ago, and it just seems that they haven't been able to build on it. First time actually we saw Buemi take a small, and I mean small, Krumme's. That's Lundgaard going off. Lundgaard off at the Dunlop chicane, loses the front wing, and so is going to have to limp the car back to pit lane. Luckily or unluckily for the Danish driver, he's not in the points, so he's not really going to be missing out on much. That's another. Let's see. Here's Van der Linde pulling alongside. You're going to see the car dart into pit lane here. It's a fairly fast pit lane entry here in Fuji. Here's Buemi. And for a moment, it was looking like Buemi was starting to close. I'm not sure. If it was, it must have been a slight error from Whincup. And he is actually still closing, so it's down to 3 seconds now. Although, I'm not sure if we're going to have enough laps unless Whincup and his tyres fall off the cliff, which you'll see come the end of this lap. So across the line, do we see a decrease in the advantage between Whincup and Buemi? There's Da Costa struggling to keep on terms with Ericsson, who's managed to go up into 10th position. They go across the line. Whincup's managed to take a 10th back from Buemi. So with 2 laps remaining, barring any mistakes, this is looking like Whincup's race, although I was starting to say that last time out in Italy, and it all fell apart for Team France. So I'm not going to say too much until we get to the finish. But your top three still stands as Whincup for Australia in the lead, with Buemi and Marcello of Team Switzerland in second and third. And still a good showing there from Canada as well, being fourth and fifth. And in terms of the championship battle, still sixth position is Rosenqvist, and O'Ward in eighth position. So Rosenqvist going to take a few points out of O'Ward's advantage and Magnussen's advantage as well, as he is non-scoring at the moment. So you come round the final corners, across the line to start the final lap for Jamie Whincup. But this is camera under pressure from Albuquerque. Here's Buemi and Marcello. Here's Roman De Angelis, who still managed to hold on ahead of Wickens. Wickens obviously was earlier getting fairly frustrated, claiming he was much quicker. Than his teammate, but obviously was unable to do anything about it. They come through the chicane for the final time. It's just this tight and twisty final sector to navigate for Jamie Whincup. He's out of the second to last corner. He now just has the Panasonic corner to go, and this long start finish straight. And it looks fairly certain that Jamie Whincup is going to win the Division 2 sprint race here in Japan as he crosses the line. A brilliant result there for Australia, and a great result for Team Switzerland as they come across the line second and third. Buemi and Marcello, and equally De Angelis and Wickens fourth and fifth. So good points there for Switzerland and for Canada. Rosenqvist comes through in sixth, and O'Ward in eighth. Arthur Leclerc comes through in ninth, with Ericsson taking the final point there to what has been a fairly clean sprint race. There wasn't any sort of penalties or incidents involving penalties that I can remember from there, so clean racing all the way through, just a few mistakes. As the final runners come through, Lundgaard is the final driver. Here's Riquelme, recovering from the first lap. Loss of the front wing, and Lundgaard is going to be behind him. So all the remaining cars across the line. It's just left for confirmation that Jamie Whincup is your Division 2 sprint race winner, with Sebastian Buemi and Raffaele Marcello second and third, Roman De Angelis in fourth, and Robert Wickens in fifth. Felix Rosenqvist in sixth position, ahead of Antonio Giovinazzi, and Pato O'Ward in eighth. Arthur Leclerc came ninth, with Marcus Ericsson taking the final point in 10th position. Antonio Fuoco in 11th, Antonio Felix da Costa in 12th, and Rafael Camara in 13th. Further down the field, Felipe Albuquerque in 14th, Felipe Nasr in 15th, Galvin van der Linde in 16th, Kevin Magnussen in a disappointing 17th, with Mahivir Raghunathan in 18th, Sheldon van der Linde in 19th, Nico Verone 20th, and Sasha Fenestraz 21st, and Norenkov Kane in 22nd, Riquelme in 23rd. Finally across the line was Christian Lundgaard, and retirements from Will Power and Rafael Villagomez. So after the first race of the day, it is back over to Chris.
Yes, congratulations to Jamie Whincup for a fantastic drive in the sprint there. And again, well done for Switzerland, and in particular Sebastian Buemi gaining points on his rivals there, considering that he finished 4 places ahead of Rosenqvist and 6 ahead of O'Ward. So very much needed points for him, and well done to them. But now we can look towards Division 1 now. And much like before, we can show you the standings going into it. Firstly, with the drivers, René Rast leads the way only just by 3 points to Sandy Stuvik, who's then only 2 ahead of Philip Hansen in third, who's only 4 ahead of Alex Palou. It is so close. Naoki Yamamoto is only 10 from the lead and 83 points. He's just been so consistent all season. Hopefully he can bring something on home soil here today. And then Nick de Vries on 76 points, just 17 from René Rast, so it's all still very close for him too. One good result can flip things heavily. And then Shane van Gisbergen in 69 points, Scott Dixon's Gopatra in 67, Joseph Newgarden in 64, Simon Pagenaud with a very rough weekend out in Monza would want to rectify something here on 63 points. Paul di Resta on 59, Stoffel Vandoorne on 57, Bourdais equally with a bad result in Monza wants to rectify it on 54, and then we have Daniel Yokoda 54 points as well, Alex Dunn 53, Carl Larson 46, Kamui Kobayashi 45, who want to bring something for the Japanese crowd here. Andrew Lotter on 40, Elfyn Evans on 40 as well, Jack Aitken 38, Drew Santor 34, Robin Fries 29, and we've got Max Hart 22, James Collado 21, Natalie Niwatana-Farragut 20 points, and then we have the likes of Mick Schumacher on 11, Ella Lloyd at 11 as well, Tedasuke Makino 5, Larry Tenford at 3 points, and then we have Mark Lucens on 1 point, and Ugo Chukwu, Alex Lynn, and Vinny Dix all on 0. And we can see with the nation standings, Germany is on 144 points, just 6 ahead of Spain in second place. New Zealand is on 136 points, 8 behind Germany. Japan only 11 behind Germany, so it's so close. France on 170 points, 27 away from Germany in 5th place. Thailand on 110 with the United States of America on 110 as well. England on 109 points, Netherlands 108, Scotland on 97 points, Belgium 92, all very close there in the dangerous zone for relegation. And then we have Ireland on 75, and then Wales with 51 points. Before we show the grid for the Division 1 sprint, there has been a driver change at the Team America. Ugo Chukwu was only a stand-in for Carl Larson, who served the race ban out in Monza. He is now back in, and Ugo Chukwu is now back at reserve. But now we can show you the sprint grid. Nick de Vries starts on the front row with Paul di Resta alongside him with Stoffel Vandoorne in 3rd place. It was so close between them in Monza, literally only half a second between victory between those two in the feature race. And we have Simon Pagenaud in 4th, Philip Hansen in 5th, who will really want to get points because his lead has just been slipping away. Sebastian Bourdais is in 6th place, and then you've got Alex Palou in 7th, Kamui Kobayashi starting in 8th, Scott Dixon and Shane van Gisbergen starting 9th and 10th respectively, René Rast at 11th, Naoki Yamamoto in 12th, Andrew Lotter at 13th, Carl Larson in 14th, Joseph Newgarden in 15th, Dries van Toorn in 16th, Sandy Stuvik, quite a woeful qualifying for him when you see his previous racing efforts, in 17th, Robin Franz in 18th, Daniel Yokoda in 19th, James Collado in 20th, Elfyn Evans 21st, Natalie Niwatana-Farragut in 22nd, Jack Aitken 23rd, Alex Dunn 24th, Ella Lloyd in 25th, and Max Hart starting in last place. But now I can hand you back to Ryan Ferris for the Division 1 sprint.
Division 1 sprint race time now, and it is Nick de Vries on pole from Paul di Resta in 2nd position for Scotland. As the lights come on, who's going to be getting a cracking getaway this time round? Lights are out, and it is de Vries away, but a good start from Pagenaud in the background. He leapfrogs into 2nd position. And further on in the background, are we going to have any dive bombs into turn 1? No, but it is Pagenaud who takes the lead. So Pagenaud takes the lead, Hansen into 3rd. Hansen, who for the first time this season has found himself toppled from the top of the standings. And so he's going to try and do everything he can to find himself back on top. And he's done that by coming out in 3rd position so far. But Pagenaud with a lightning getaway into 1st ahead of de Vries. So down to the Dunlop chicane for the first time. It's Pagenaud from de Vries, Hansen, de Resta demoted down into 4th position, and van Gisbergen in 5th. Further down the order at the championship stand-ins, in terms of Rast is the current championship leader. He's down in 15th position, so in a non-scoring position at the moment. Can he make any improvement in this sprint race as he come across the line for the first time. And Bourdais saying he's lost drive, so Bourdais, who's generally been one of the faster drivers so far in these last few races. Looks like a possible transmission failure there. We'll get confirmation, and Hansen saying he's been involved in retired due to an accident. What's that all about? And there's definitely an incident going on in the background there. So that's Robin Friends, I believe, who's going down the order, who's had a collision with Larson. Larson returning from a race ban, as it was Uguchugwe in there for Monza. So a flurry of cars going here, there and everywhere. So Friends is going to have to limp the car the whole lap with only half a front wing, and is slowing down the rest of the competitors as well. All this to and throwing in, that's contact again. Who's that been with? So further down the back end of the field, who is it? It looks like it was Jack Aitken, who swerves around the outside, but yes, so contact made there between Friends and Aitken. Although yeah, it was just Aitken following the outskirts of the track to try and avoid Friends, and Friends just swerved across as if Aitken was there, so I wouldn't really place much blame there on Aitken. And Friends putting himself out of this sprint race after completing just one lap. So Friends, confirmation there, is out of the race, still at the front. Pagenaud, who's extended his advantage to 1.2 seconds. In the meantime, Hansen all over the back of De Vries. So is he going to launch an attack down into the first corner? No, but I know someone else who is. It's Yamamoto. Still having second thoughts, trying to overtake Van Dorn. In the meantime, Van Gisbergen on De Resta, but that's not quite worked out as well. Yamamoto, who is quite interestingly in 5th position in the standings at the moment, only 10 points off the lead. Hasn't really been anywhere all season. He managed to pick up 1 podium so far this season, but apart from that has just stayed consistent. Very little in terms of retirements, and that is what has allowed him to only be 10 points off the lead of this championship. Looks as though for a brief moment there was a bit of smoke in the background, so I don't know if that was just a lockup or there's another engine failure in the background, but we'll soon see if it was. Hansen again on the back end of De Vries, not quite as close this time, and there's definitely an engine blowout, and that looks to be Scott Dixon. So Scott Dixon, who will be on the front row in the feature race, is falling to the back end of the field as a result of that. So that's allowed Palou to get up into 9th position, another one of the front runners for the championship. That's the New Zealand driver out of the race, and that's Lee Watanabe out with an engine failure as well. So 2 cars out on the start-finish straight on the same lap. So another retirement there, 3 retirements in total so far. Pagenaud still sprinting away in the lead, nearly 2 seconds the advantage to De Vries. So Nick de Vries, who's been extending the gap to Hansen, so not under pressure anymore from the British driver. In the meantime, it's Kobayashi now looking to make a move on Van Dorn and does so. So Yamamoto's got through and so has Kobayashi. So that is Japan 6th and 7th. And the team very happy with that. The other battle heating up in the background. Here's Stuvik, another one of the drivers up there in the championship standings, but not up there in this race at the moment. Down in 17th for the Thai driver. And here is Van Gisbergen. Finally, is he going to find his way through on De Resta? He's trying to, and yes, through goes the Kiwi driver into 4th position. I was going to go after Philip Hansen. Pagano about to complete 5 laps. He's still extending the advantage. 2.4 seconds. Is he going to make amends for Italy as we see Yamamoto going through on De Resta now? So Yamamoto up into 5th. And he's looking to have the pace possibly for a podium at this rate. Here's Dries Van Thor battling away with Danny Juncadella. Elvin Evans with a lock-up there through the final sector. Here's Hansen, and there is the all-black livery of Van Gisbergen. Kobayashi has also managed to get through on De Resta now. I thought I could see a name go down the order, so both Japanese cars gradually making their way through the field. Here's Simon Pagenaud still leading. Back to Collado. 18th position. Ever since that race ban, he hasn't quite had the pace. Whether or not there's been a knock in his confidence since that race ban. So if you remember, he had pole position, or a front row at least, at Dijon. But here is Stuvik down the inside into 16th position ahead of Van Thor. And he's going to have Juncadella to deal with next. Here is Hansen, and Team England really needing some points at the moment after what was a strong start to the season. They're dwindling down the field and coming into risk of relegation. There's Alloy for Team Wales, 20th position. She's managing to hang on in front of Jack Aitken. Obviously Aitken involved in that early incident with Robin Frines. The two American cars of Larson and Newgarden together, 13th and 14th. The start finish straight they come. Here's Pagenaud still extending his advantage to De Vries. Here's Van Thor going back up the inside of Stuvik. So Dries Van Thor retaking that 16th position. Stuvik not having the early race pace that we're used to. Hansen not confident in keeping Van Gisbergen behind, as Van Gisbergen has a lunge into the chicane. A little bit of a lock up there for good measure, so that's going to give it a little bit of breathing space to Hansen. Pagenaud rounds the final corner again to clock off 8 laps as he comes across the line. Here's Hansen under pressure now, going a little bit on the defensive there into turn 1 ahead of Van Gisbergen. Van Gisbergen, as a result of those lockups down at the chicane, not quite close enough to challenge, but is still building and building. But he's going to want to try and do something soon. There's De Resta struggling there into turn 2. Trying to hold on to the 2 Japanese drivers, which in turn chasing after Van Gisbergen. So if Van Gisbergen doesn't get the job done sooner, he's going to have 2 Japanese drivers very hot on his table. Sweeping through these very tight and twisty corners of the final sector, De Vries just about keeping, well, a far distance away from Pagenaud, but not too far away from Hansen. But even closer is Van Gisbergen this time to Hansen. The gap is now 4 tenths as they come across the line, and that's definitely close enough for Van Gisbergen to have a move into turn 1. And here he comes down the inside, and he locks up into turn 1. So Van Gisbergen nearly forcing Hansen. It was heads-up driving there from Hansen to not be collected by Van Gisbergen there, and manages to keep it in 3rd position. But that's now allowed the 2 Japanese drivers to catch up onto the back of the New Zealand driver. But they look to be in their own scrap. Yamamoto has done the hard work to drag Kobayashi up to Van Gisbergen. It looks like Kobayashi's going for the inside. No. He'll soon be on the team radio asking for a change of position. The team asking the 2 Japanese drivers to keep it clean. But very, very close to Van Gisbergen. He must have at least 2 flat spots there. It's going to be a train as Van Gisbergen has managed to catch a little bit onto the back of Hansen now. So it's going to be a 4-car train for 3rd position. We ride on board by Kobayashi. Kobayashi closing on his teammate. Yamamoto going slightly defensive into turn 1. Kobayashi with a little bit of fade, but no real intention there. On board Hansen looking back at Van Gisbergen. You can see the 2 Japanese cars in the background as well. So what can Hansen do to hold on to this position? They've completed 10 laps now. 7 to go, including this one. Kobayashi with a dive down the inside, but still unable to get through on Yamamoto. Hansen looking as though he's struggling there through the tight and twisty corners. Car not quite able to turn in the way he probably wants it to. Still, 3rd position for now. Where is Van Gisbergen? There's Van Gisbergen. to come across the line. What is the gap there? It's half a second between Hansen and Van Gisbergen. Van Gisbergen not close enough this time round. He thought about it. So another lap, or another turn one, survived by Hansen. The team reiterating that he's doing a good job holding on to this third position. All Hansen really needs to do is allow the two Japanese drivers, if they were to... And that's a blowout there from the engine gone for Hansen. So as I was saying, what job he needed to hold on to that third position, the engine had other ideas. That's allowed Van Gisbergen up into third position, but disaster for Hansen. On for some good points there. They needed those points. But it's all pretty much gone up in smoke there. Gets craned away. Back at the front. We haven't seen him for a while. But Simon Pagenaud leads with a 4-second advantage now to De Vries. De Vries fairly comfortable in his second position ahead of Van Gisbergen. And now we got the two Japanese cars who continue to squabble. It's still Yamamoto in fourth ahead of Kobayashi. But this is actually allowing the rest of us. Van Dorn's going down the order there. So what's going on there with the Belgian driver? Alex done with a lock-up into turn one. But Van Dorn still looking as though he's holding on to the position. So it must have been a mistake that's allowed two cars to go through there. Here's Lotterer with a slight lock-up. Up into 7th position for the German driver. He has Van Dorn in 9th, but at the meantime he's also got Alex Palou all over him. It looks as though he's definitely got an issue there. He's slowing. I think this is possibly looking like a throttle or electrical issue for the Belgian driver, and he's going to find himself in what was going to be a good point scoring position, and he's going to be out of the points. In fact, he's already out of the points before he makes it back to pit lane, but he has made it back to pit lane. That's promoted Ha into 10th. And it looks like Van Gisbergen has had a turn of pace, and actually, although starting to run out of laps, but it looks as though he's catching De Vries, so De Vries is going to start feeling a bit of pressure now, and it is in the shape of Shane Van Gisbergen. In the meantime, where the two Japanese drivers have been squabbling, that's allowed Paul di Resta to close in a little on these two drivers. 6th position at the moment for di Resta, but he's hoping, even though he was on the front row at the start of this race, he's hoping to try and get a top 5 out of this. And Yamamoto's got a problem. Problem for Yamamoto. That's released Kobayashi, but poor Yamamoto. And with Yamamoto slowing, that's also slowed Kobayashi a bit, so any chances, I think, of Kobayashi trying to catch Van Gisbergen have been dashed at the moment, but there's still a few laps to go. Anything can happen, as we've seen over the course of the season. So, De Vries less than 2 seconds between himself and Van Gisbergen. So Van Gisbergen really with the bit between his teeth here, trying to chase down that second position. Is he going to have the laps to do that though? As he crossed the line. It'll be 15 laps completed and 2 to go. Across the line, 4.8, and it's another few temps taken out. Rast, championship leader, is having to pit with an issue. Out of the top 10, so points taken away there for championship leader. So Hansen was in a podium position in the title fight. He's gone out. Rast with an issue, and he's out of the points now. Who of these top guys in the championship are wanting to score points? Palou in 7th at the moment. Stuvik, the other driver, in the top points or top positions for the championship, and he's also struggling. So as it stands at the moment, out of the top 4 in the championship, Palou is the only one who's on the course to score points. But in the meantime, Pagenaud starts the final lap of the race. 5-second advantage to De Vries, and that's Rast fresh out of pit lane. And he's going to be returning with need of a front wing. It's just gone bad to worse there for the German driver. He's definitely going to have a bit of a rethink before later's feature race. Struggling big time there actually. Yamamoto with the fastest lap of the race, obviously on those fresh tyres. But rounding the final sector, it's Simon Pagenaud with that 5-second advantage. He is definitely made up for the issues out in Monza so far. Here comes Simon Pagenaud down the start-finish straight. I'll wait until it's definitely happened this time. But across the line comes Simon Pagenaud to win here the sprint for Division 1. And that is somewhat of a redemption from last time out. Van Gisbergen closed massively on De Vries, but it wasn't quite enough to take that second position, but still 3rd place for the Kiwi. Kobayashi on home soil in 4th, and De Resta comes through into 5th. Rest of the field comes through. Joseph Newgarden being the final points paying position. Here come the rest. Yamamoto in 18th position. He would definitely not be happy with that result, all things considered from earlier, but he's still got the feature race to go. There's Van Dorn, and then got to wait for Evans and Rest being the final car across the line, although we may be waiting some time as he had to pit for that front wing. Here is Rast, who decided to carry on with the Bronco front wing, and that is the field all across the line. And here is confirmation. Simon Pagenaud wins the sprint race here in Fuji ahead of Nick De Vries and Shane Van Gisbergen in 3rd. Kamui Kobayashi in 4th position on home soil with Paul Di Resta in 5th, and Andre Lotterer in 6th, and Alex Palou taking an important 7th position. Max Hart in 8th, Carl Larson in 9th, and Joseph Newgarden taking the final points playing position in 10th. Daniel Juncadere in 11th, Van Dorn No Van Thor in 12th, and Sandy Suvik in 13th. James Collado finished 14th ahead of Ella Lloyd in 15th, Alex Dunn in 16th, Jack Aitken in 17th, and Yamamoto 18th. Stoffel Van Dorn came across the line in 19th ahead of Elvin Evans, and the final finisher was Rene Rest. The retirements were Philip Hansen, Scott Dixon, Lee Wataragu, Robin Frines, and Sebastian Bourdais with the transmission failure. So, very interesting for the championship going into later's feature race, but I will hand you back over to Chris.
Hopefully that could perk things up a little bit for Team France there after Monza. Congratulations to them. And what rotten bit of luck for Philip Hansen there. It's cruel business in this, and it seems like his title chances might be slipping a little bit, and maybe for England as well. It's getting quite dangerous for them. And after all that, we are now officially at the halfway point of Season 1. But we can now go into the second half, the more crucial part, because after all, you don't win things in the first half, you win them in the second. We're going to show you now the Division 2 feature grid to kick off this segment of the season. Felix Rosenqvist starts on pole with his rival Pato O'Ward in second place right behind him, and then we have Raffaele Marcello for Switzerland in third place, Antonio Giovinazzi in fourth, Antonio Fiat-Acosta in fifth, Robert Wickens in sixth, Sebastian Buemi in seventh place who want to climb some positions, and then we have Will Power in eighth, Roman De Angelis in ninth, and then we have Jamie Whincup in 10th place, Marcus Ericsson in 11th place, Antonio Fuoco in 12th, Leclerc in 13th, Albuquerque 14th, Felipe Nasr in 15th, Rafael Camara in 16th, Stefan Riquelme in 17th, Kevin Magnussen in 18th. He'll want to get in the points finishing positions. Kelvin van der Linde in 19th, then we have Christian Lundgaard in 20th, Nico Verona 21st, Johan van der Linde 22nd, Rafael Villagomez in 23rd, Sasha Fenstras 24th, then we have the IndyCars, Mathieu Vergoulen in 25th, and Lorraine Carter-Kane in 26th. And now to kick off the first feature race of the day, back to you, Ryan Ferris.
Back again here in Fuji for the first feature race of the day. It's Division 2 and it's Rosenqvist on pole from O'Ward. The two championship contenders go head to head into turn 1 and they're away. And it's a great start there from O'Ward, who then takes the lead off of Rosenqvist. But who's this coming down the inside? Marcello having a look, but there's a punch from the back end of the car. It's Giovinazzi into the back of O'Ward. More down the back end, that's one of the Monegasque cars with both the front and rear wing missing. So we look into the background there. There's the punt there from Giovinazzi. And further on back, it's a bit of rush hour traffic at the back end there. It's Riquelme there, who's lost both his front and rear wing. And just goes siving down the outside, straight into the back of the Australian car there. I think that's Will Power, and he also gets punted from behind as well. And judging by the looks of things, I think it may have been one of the Van der Lindes. No further action there. Oh, and out of the race now after being punted off. Was that Lundgaard who's just punted him off? So, been a quite eventful first couple of corners there, and it was Lundgaard. Lundgaard believes that he chopped across him in the braking zone, which is why he made the contact. So, first retirement of the race so far. But back at the front, it's Felix Rosenqvist from Giovinazzi and Marcello. So O'Ward has managed to drop back into 4th position. I was surprised that there wasn't any form of steward's inquiry between the punting incident from Giovinazzi, but the managers of the teams are obliged, or can if they want to, protest any incidents in this race. Here's Buemi going up from 8th position into 7th position ahead of Nasr. They're side by side, but Nasr in the Brazilian car seems to have a little bit more top end speed down the start finish straight. Here's Rafael Camara in 5th position ahead of Robert Wickens. It's looking very similar to the way the sprint race went, where whoever leads manages to get a decent getaway in the early stages. But pit stops and strategy can play a big part in the way that this race pans out. We did see something similar out in Monza, where the sprint races weren't the most entertaining, but all the action came in the feature race, and hopefully that's what we're going to see again today. As we see power up the inside of Da Costa. That move didn't quite work, but then there's a car smoking in the background. We also saw Buemi going through on Nazar for 7th position, but as I said, looked as though there was a car smoking in the background, so we'll see who that is. Meanwhile, at the front, Raffaele Marcello just losing touch of Giovinazzi. He's got O'Ward all over the back of him. O'Ward's going to want to try and make this move happen as soon as possible, because he's going to have to go off up the road ahead of Rosenquist. And it is Felipe Albuquerque who had the injured blowout, so my eyes were not deceiving me. And there it is. Engine has given up the ghost and trundles to a stop down the start-finish straight. So, 2 cars out now. And taking a while for the marshals to recover the car. They'll do so now. Meanwhile, back at the front, it is still Felix Rosenquist who is building up a comfortable advantage. Further on back, this one of the Canadian cars. They come through the twisty, tight final sector. There's Giovinazzi, who's going to try and close the gap down to Rosenquist. What is the gap across the line? And that's Froco slowing. So we've pretty much had a retirement each lap so far. So out of the race goes Froco. That looks as though that's a transmission failure there for the Italian driver. Oh no, the suspension's gone. So out of the race is Froco. It all goes down to Giovinazzi now, with Italy's only hopes, and he is currently in 2nd position, so still a chance for good points for Italy today. The gap, 2.1 seconds between Rosenquist and Giovinazzi, so Giovinazzi still keeping tabs and staying a little bit more than arm's width away from Rosenquist, but still chance of a secondary attack in the second part of this stint. Across the line to click off yet another lap. That will be 4 laps completed. Giovinazzi now, and it also looks as though Marcello has managed to get rid of O'Ward. It looked for a moment there that O'Ward earlier on was going to be making a move, but here is Buemi trying to size up Felipe Nasr. Sorry, actually it's camera there, so camera who's managed to catch up onto the back of O'Ward, and it's actually being slowed here by O'Ward, held up by the championship leader. It's now allowed him to be under pressure. Team feeling that Rosenquist has got a good pace, so he potentially will go a little bit longer into its first stint. Although how long he goes we won't know, but he doesn't want to go too far into the stint if the likes of Giovinazzi pit early, because that does put him under risk of the undercut. But still, with this pace he's doing, he's just able to eke out a 10th here and a 10th there, is the Swedish driver. The man who had a very, very promising junior career, but hasn't really managed to do much with it since. Having that double win out in Macau in Formula 3, but meanwhile, here's Buemi having another move now on camera. Is he going to make it stick down into turn 1 this time? No. It seems the Swiss car compared to the Brazilian car just hasn't got the straight line speed. We saw that earlier with Buemi on NASA. Just can't get the move done. Once he pops out the slipstream down that turn 1 into, well, down the start finish straight. But he's getting closer and closer now. Is he going to pop out and go down the inside here? No. And this demonstrates the difference in setups. Obviously, Switzerland going for a more downforce heavy setup, and he's going to go down the inside. That's Giovinazzi off. Giovinazzi goes off with a puncture. So both Team Italy cars out of the race. And poor luck for Giovinazzi. It was looking so promising today. But that's given a breath of fresh air and a sigh of relief for Rosenqvist, who now has near enough 5 seconds over Raffaele Marcello. We'd managed to go at least one lap without a retirement, but then another one came the lap after, so being a very attritional race here as Buemi goes down the inside of camera and makes it stick this time. So now he's going to go about chasing championship leader O'Ward. Buemi currently sits 4th in the standings. Look how the moment he gets past camera, he's just able to pull away, as that's a bit of a lock up there through the Dunlop chicane for race leader Rosenqvist. He can afford to have a few more of those though, as Ericsson now being passed, or trying to pass, I think that was, Da Costa, but Da Costa fights back and holds on to that 9th position. Now O'Ward under pressure now from Sebastian Buemi. But as you can see, a little bit more power there from the Mexican car, pulling a car length or 2 on the Swiss car. And even though Buemi is tapped up in the slipstream, you can see him gaining now, but is it going to be enough into turn 1? He ducks out onto the inside, and down the inside comes Buemi. So another position gained for the Swiss driver. So it is very much like the sprint. It's Switzerland 2nd and 3rd, with Buemi seeming to be the faster of the two at the moment in the early stages of this race. But what has O'Ward got in the locker at the moment? Because it's not going to be too long, and he's going to be back under pressure from camera for that 4th position. Meanwhile, his championship rival, that's a bit of a lunge there. Power on Wickens. Wickens firmly shuts the door. Now, come round to complete another lap. The gap still continuing to extend between Rosenqvist and Marcello. 5.6 seconds is the lead for the Swedish driver. Further on back, this is Roman De Angelis coming through on Leclerc. No, not quite far enough alongside. So still leading. He's just got to nurse these tyres essentially throughout the first part of the stint, and that's Van der Linde getting it all crossed up there, but still managing to keep it on track. Here's Buemi slowly closing in on his teammate. Still also extending the advantage to O'Ward, who still has a few car lengths ahead of camera. But the gap is within a second between O'Ward and camera. Still, Rosenqvist, who's actually lost a bit of time this time round. Remember, that gap was 5.6 seconds, it's now 5.3 seconds, so he's made a mistake somewhere and lost 3 tenths. Rosenqvist just has to keep it consistent, as he's being told the Swiss car's matching his pace at the moment. But they're not bettering his pace, so still a comfortable advantage, but a few more mistakes from Rosenqvist and that gap will shrink ever more. As you can now see from Marcello, you can see the Swiss car ahead, and that's another lunge there for power. Still unable to get through on Wickens. In the meantime, O'Ward having a lock-up out of the chicane, that's allowing camera to get even closer. Obviously, could this be signs of the ever-mounting pressure with the championship for O'Ward? And Rosenqvist has responded this time round. The gap has now gone back out to 5.7 seconds. Here's camera with a little bit of a fade to the inside, but no real intention there, I think, of making the move. On board with race leader Felix Rosenqvist, who continues to extend his advantage over Marcello. But in the meantime, Buemi catching on to Marcello at the moment. The two Swiss drivers similarly paced, but it seems as though Buemi's a couple of attempts faster, as Van der Linde has a go up the inside of Villagomez. Magnussen having not the best of days at the office. 18th position for the driver who came into this weekend in 2nd position in the standings. He's currently gone down to 3rd position as a result of that poor showing in the sprint race, and it's still a poor showing for him today at the moment in this feature race, down in 18th. And there's an engine gone there ahead, and that's Lundgaard, I think. Yep, Lundgaard. His engine has expired down the start-finish straight, and he's going to, well, I was going to say he was going to pull off and retire, but no, he's going to continue a corner more. But after the great success of last time out in Monza, becoming the first team in the Cup to score the double, it's been disaster so far this weekend for Team Denmark. Wickens has now been passed by Power, so Power up into 6th position. Fenestraz further on back with a lock-up of his own. Currently only 21 cars left in the race so far. There's been a fair few retirements already, and we're only 12 laps completed. But here's Wickens fending off Villagomez, who's in turn fending off. There's another engine gone, and it's O'Ward. Pato Award championship leader retires from the race. Now this has put a spanner in the works for Team Mexico. So I think for sure that is going to give the championship lead to Rosenquist, providing Rosenquist manages to get to the finish of this race. As it stands at the moment, we might not have anyone getting to the end of this race with the rate of retirements that we're having. Here is Ericsson, sat in 8th position. Buemi still chipping away at his teammate, although the gap pretty much staying the same between the pair of them, and Rosenquist continuing to extend his advantage. So, 13 laps completed. This is the point where the pit window opens, and indeed, we have got our first pit stops. So, Marcello, the call has come to pit Marcello. And round they come again. Buemi coming very close. That's Wickens with a little bit of a cross, getting it all crossed up through the middle part of the sector. Around they come again. So we're expecting Marcello in. Come down, start finish straight. A few other drivers diving for the pit lane. I think actually no, Marcello's gone round one more time, yeah. So all this is allowing Buemi to get a little bit of a tow from his teammate, although still just over a second away, as Arthur Leclerc has a look down the inside of Da Costa. Da Costa being a very hard driver to pass today. Start, finish straight one more time. This is Felipe Nasr we're looking at the moment. And so he is pitted. Will Power comes out just ahead of Nasr. Although he's going to be on cold tyres, so it's going to take him a little bit for him to get those tyres up to temperature, so that's going to allow Nasr to close that gap. It is Villagomez, 11th position. So ahead is Rosenquist, and you can see in the background that's Marcello diving into the pit lane. Also pitting is Ericsson. DeAngelis also pitting, so how long is Buemi going to go in this stint? Magnussen has pitted also, so Marcello is hopefully going to come out ahead of Raghunathan. Indeed, it comes out ahead of, no, just behind Karth Kane, so that's not ideal for the Swiss driver. And all this shuffling and changing of positions through pit stops has promoted Camera up into 3rd position for the time being. Wickens 4th, Da Costa 5th. as we see Van der Linde all over the back end of the other Canadian car of De Angelis. Carthagena being passed there by Marcello, so quick and easy work there by the Swiss driver on his fresh tyres. Ericsson having a little bit of an issue and a little bit of a lock-up on the exit of the chicane. Leclerc now comes into the pits. Where we're up, here is Camera still in that third position. Now, Marcello in 8th position, obviously he's potentially still net second position, is in nice and clear air there by lots of things. He's got 10 seconds to the next car ahead. Buemi has also got clear air as well, but he's going to be pitting this lap. So round the chicane comes Marcello. Buemi is into the pits now. Leclerc under pressure there from De Angelis. And Buemi, Da Costa and Camera all pit now. Rosenqvist still staying out ahead, so is this going to work in his favour? I mean, he did build quite a substantial lead, and the fact that he's able to go this far on the tyres. Here's Villagomez moving up ahead of Calvin van der Linde by the looks of things. Plenty of movers and shakers here as the two Brazilian cars are both together, 8th and 9th. Buemi managing to actually leapfrog Marcello out of pit lanes, so the overcut seems to be the way to go at the moment. Here's Villagomez going down the inside of Sheldon van der Linde now. And Marcello not particularly happy with the way things have panned out. The team allowing him to be undercut, or overcut actually, by his own teammate. Calvin van der Linde now pits. Still waiting for Wickens and Verone, and also more importantly our leader Rosenqvist to visit pit lane. I think the latest we'll see people pit is around lap 21, lap 22. And there's confirmation. Felix Rosenqvist will pit this lap. So into pit lane, Rosenqvist peels off. Further on down the back end is Nico Verone being caught by Sebastian Buemi on fresh tyres. I think actually Rosenqvist, Wickens pits now, but Rosenqvist is going to find himself quite a way ahead of Buemi actually, as he'll be exiting pit lane soon. And indeed, he has now just exited the pit lane. Sebastian Buemi sets the fastest lap of the race and dives down the inside, but no, doesn't manage to get through on Verone, so this is going to cost Buemi big time. But if that is correct, the advantage at the moment between himself, I know, is now being updated, so the gap fairly similar to what it was before the pit stops, so other than Buemi being able to leapfrog his teammate, hasn't really managed to benefit as he comes down the inside of Verone and takes that second position from the Argentine driver. Verone yet to stop. I would have thought he would be doing so sometime soon. Here's Da Costa having a lunge down the inside of Wickens, but not quite close enough for the move to stick. The two Canadian drivers together for 10th and 11th. But Rosenqvist with still a dominant advantage. It's going to be over 7 seconds across the line. Yep, Verone finally comes into pit. The gap 7.4 seconds between himself and Buemi. Maple rules is being called between the two Canadian drivers. Maple rules, papaya rules, sounds quite tasty to me, but that's a change of position there for Wickens ahead of De Angelis. So here is Nasser, 8th position for Brazil, climbing over the back end of Leclerc. Obviously it seems Monegas team having a better weekend so far. It seems that they've gone the right direction in terms of setup, and albeit not the most competitive, they're more competitive than they were last time out in Monza. The team going for a very downforce heavy upgrade package in the last upgrade window, which didn't suit them particularly well for Monza. But where with this circuit there's only really the start-finish straight, which is a very long start-finish straight, it's suited them better this weekend. Raghunathan, not sure what circuit they're at, finding himself to be a little bit lost through that final sector. It is quite easy to get lost trying to find the correct racing line through those final corners. So much so that the Indian driver wasn't quite sure where he was, but back at the front, Buemi still ahead of Marcello, and now 8.5 seconds behind Rosenqvist. Here's Da Costa having another look down the inside of De Angelis. Wickens, in the meantime, as you saw earlier, has managed to get through on Nasser. So a little lock up there into the final corner from Buemi. That's not going to help his cause towards the end of this race. Marcello fairly comfortable at the moment in 3rd position, 2.7 seconds ahead of Will Power, who also has camera for company. And someone having a bit of a moment there into the chicane. Didn't quite catch exactly who that was, but nothing too dramatic think actually this is on board one of the Swiss cars. Further on back to Costa again. Looked like a even more substantial attempt at a move, but still unable to get past the Brazilian. And Ericsson getting it all wrong. At the next corner. Now Leclerc under pressure now from Robert Wickens. Wickens well tucked up within the slipstream. He's definitely going to be having a move. He may even have it all done before turn 1. But it seems, as you can see there, the Monegasque car just has a little bit more power down the start-finish straight compared to the Canadian car. You can see there, the moment he pulled out the slipstream, he just started to lose that momentum. And so Wickens is going to have a bit of a rethink here. He certainly has the pace during the midsections of the court circuit. You can see he's gaining. Now, he's winding it up down into Dunlop. He's looking down the inside into Dunlop. Is he going to go through? No. Leclerc shuts the door, holds on to that position. For a moment, then, as Da Costa got through, Da Costa's finally got through on Nasser and promotes himself up into 10th position. He's been very persistent in trying to make that move stick down into Dunlop, and it finally has worked. Here's Marcello, and further on back, here's Power still under increasing pressure from the Brazilian behind. You can see down the straight, Power taking a more defensive line. Camera not close enough to make a move. So they swoop round through these fast flowing and sweeping corners. No real difference in downforce setup can be seen there. Obviously, as you can see from other drivers, through that long right-hander you see him closing on the car ahead, and that suggests that they're carrying a bit more downforce. Power going on the defensive again into Dunlop, still holds on to that position ahead of camera. Around they go. Camera definitely closer this time. He's just got to have a good exit out of the final corner, which it looks like he's done so. So down the start-finish straight. Once again, tucked up into the slipstream of the Australian driver ahead. Can he make a move? He's closing, and he pulls out alongside Power. And it looks as though it's going to be job done into turn 1. And swoops across in front, and Power comes back through on the inside. Brilliant piece of driving there from Will Power. Very, very tight driving there from camera to swoop ahead of Power the way he did into the braking zone. I think it caught Power a bit by surprise. But camera, where he thought he had the job done, he's going to have to do it all over again. 25 laps completed of the 33. It's still Rosenqvist now leading by a 10.4 second advantage to Buemi. Buemi has extended his advantage to Marcello as well, and with these two squabbling and bickering, that's also allowed Marcello to extend the advantage a little bit more to these two. Magnussen has managed to creep up onto the scoreboard, down in 14th position. He's on target for a couple points, but that's not going to really help defend his championship fight at the moment. He will gain 2 points on award, but obviously I believe Rosenqvist will be taking the lead of this championship. camera, still not able to get through. And here he is, our race leader. It's not over yet, it's Felipe Nasr. Has a look on Villagomez for 11th spot. So here's camera down the inside of Power. And I think that was job done. Yes, it does look to have been job done there. So finally, camera ahead of Power. Has he got enough laps and enough pace advantage to catch Marcello in third? But it looks like Power's not quite done yet. He's still close enough to camera. He's going to be in the slipstream if he gets a good exit out of turn 1. Sorry, the final corner. He's going to try and slipstream down the start-finish straight into turn 1. But it looks like camera's had a far better exit. Power is nothing but a dot in the distance now. Takes a little bit of a defensive line for good measure. Here's Da Costa now on the back of De Angelis. Oh, and that's Verone with an off at the exit of turn 1 and rather dangerously re-entering the circuit, nearly taking out his teammate. Oh, and what happened there? It just seemed like the front end just bobbled a bit there and unsettled the car, and well, he didn't quite spin it. And Verone making his opinions known about the current car at the moment, and obviously there has to be some sort of truth to it, being that both cars are at the back end of the field. Still looking on at Marcello, who's now nearly 9 seconds behind teammate Buemi, and only 3 seconds now ahead of Camera, or less than 3 seconds actually, so Camera is closing in on that advantage. In the meantime, this is Wickens going through on Ericsson for 6th position, so great move there by the Canadian. Maple rules definitely working out for him, and he has managed to go on and overtake Leclerc and now Ericsson, so in that 6th position, De Angelis in 9th. Still 12 seconds the advantage. A real dominant performance so far by Felix Rosenqvist. Team Switzerland at the moment having a good day, but as we saw last time out in Monza, it can all come down to the final corner. It just seems that Lady Luck has to be on your side. On board with De Angelis, still back to Marcello. The gap still just under 3 seconds between Marcello and Camera. I think barring any mistakes, Marcello should be feeling fairly comfortable, as we see a swap of positions potentially coming up for the two Argentinian drivers. They're in their own little race here because there is no one else anywhere near them. Marcello, and that's Power with a lock up there. Still trying to chase after Camera in that 4th position. He's got Wickens gradually making his way up onto the back of him. Rosenquist still extending that advantage. He's just made it look so easy from the off. "30 laps completed, 3 to go, including this one. And he's just got to pretty much cruise to the finish and look after the car. As we see, this is De Angelis and Da Costa. This is the battle for 9th position. Da Costa, who's been very fast, particularly in the middle sector. His move he's been going for pretty much all race has been a move down into Dunlop, but it's taken him a few attempts to make the move, and he hasn't really got enough time to make a few attempts at the move. He's going to have to get it done sooner rather than later. Coming across the line to start the second to last lap. He is comfortably ahead of his teammate Marcello. 11 seconds pretty much between the pair of them. Marcello somewhat comfortable in his advantage to Camera. Camera still has Power for close company, although he's got out of that important 1 second. And here's Ericsson going for a dive down the inside of Wickens, but that didn't manage to work this time round, and that's cost him a couple of car lengths that he's going to have to try and fight back as Rosenquist comes across the line to start the final lap of the race. He's navigated the first corner and just has 15 more corners to go. 15 more corners where everything can go all wrong, as France saw last time out. But hopefully for the Swedish driver, he'll be crossing the line and taking the lead of this Division 2 championship. Award his main rival out of the race. So that's going to be a precious 25 points plus the point for fastest lap. Here we go, through the final corners. Only one corner remaining for Felix Rosenquist. Now down at this incredibly long straight. And the checkered flag is being readied and it's being waved for Felix Rosenquist, who wins in dominant fashion here in Fuji. Buemi, the next to cross the line for Team Switzerland. A very good day at the office for Switzerland, with two podiums this weekend. Marcello also coming across in 3rd position. That's going to be a great haul of points there. Camera didn't manage to overhaul the advantage. In fact, actually got very close with Power. who rounds out the top 5. The rest of the field comes streaming through. And Sheldon van der Linde being the last car in the points. Oh, very close there, that battle for the points. Here comes Varone. And Fenestraz, Whincup in the background as well. Still ahead of the 2 Indian cars who are the last to cross the line. There's Raghunathan, who still doesn't quite know where he is at the moment. But he still manages to finish ahead of teammate Karthikeyan, and that is the lot. So, confirmation of the very dominant race win there from Felix Rosenqvist, who finishes in first ahead of Sebastian Buemi. Raffaele Marcello comes third with Rafael Camara in fourth. Will Power finishes fifth with Robert Wickens in sixth. Marcus Ericsson seventh. Arthur Leclerc eighth. Roman De Angelis in ninth. And Antonio Felix da Costa rounds out the top 10. Rafael Villagomez in 11th. Kelvin van der Linde in 12th. And Felipe Nasr in 13th. Moving further on down the order, Kevin Magnussen finished 14th with Sheldon van der Linde taking the final points there in 15th. Nico Varone 16th with Sasha Fenestraz 17th. Jamie Whincup in 18th, and the 2 Indian drivers of Raghunathan and Karthikeyan, the final drivers to finish in 19th and 20th. More importantly now, Pato Award with that all-important retirement in 21st. Christian Lundgaard 22nd, Giovinazzi and Fuoco also retiring in 23rd and 24th, Felipe Albuquerque in 25th, and Stefan Rakelmi in 26th. So after a very big sway in the championship, it is now back over to Chris.
Wow. What a crucial moment in the championship. What a points sway, considering that Pato Award was going to be on for some good, decent points, and all of his rivals now get a lot in comparison. That is a very, very crucial moment. After that, let's see what actually that does. And now Felix Rosenqvist leads the championship by 14 points to Sebastian Buemi, and now Pato Award is tucked in behind on 110. 15 points away from Felix Rosenqvist. There's still a long way to go, a lot of races to come, but that is a huge moment. Kevin Magnussen not able to capitalise on his woeful qualifying and try and get points, unfortunately for him. Arthur Leclerc still in 5th place with 91 points. Will Power harnessing back some points after a brilliant little battle with the Brazilian cars there. And then we have Robert Wickens in 7th place with 89 points. Raffaele Marcello with another great points haul for Switzerland in general on 81. And then Jamie Whincup on 75. Antonio Felix da Costa on 74. Felipe Albuquerque on 70th. Antonio Giovinazzi on 69 points. Then we have Felipe Nasr. And then we also have Christian Lundgaard on 63 points. Roman De Angelis on 52 points. Stefan Rakelmi now on 51 points. Marcus Ericsson on 49. Kelvin van der Linde 39. Sasha Fenestraz 38. Fornaroli 36. Fuoco 34. Camara on 26 points. Sheldon van der Linde 26. Nico Varone 19. And then we have James Hinchcliffe on 18. Maha Birugenican still on 10. And we have Bruno Senna 9. Rafael Villagomez 8. Paco 2, and Narain Karthikeyan still on the 0 points. And now for the championship standings for the constructors, or nations rather. Switzerland now takes the lead in the championship, with Sweden on 18 points behind at 174. Australia now 165 points. Now that we're over halfway in this championship, we might as well show the line of promotion, and Australia are just 6 points ahead of Canada in this segment. There's still a long way to go, I know, but there is drama ensuing. We have Denmark on 158 points, Portugal 144, Monaco 142, Italy 139. All of them are so close to that third place promotion spot. It's anyone's game right now. And we have Mexico on 118, Brazil 99, South Africa 65, Argentina 59, and India with 10. From one dramatic point of the season to potentially another, we can now show you the Division 1 feature race, the final race of the day. And it is the Kiwi cars, Shane van Gisbergen and Scott Dixon on the front row, only 1500s between them. But actually, it's been very close between a lot of cars. Kamui Kobayashi in third place with only, pretty much 500s behind in third place. Alex Palou fourth, Sebastian Bourdais in fifth place, within a tenth. The top five within a tenth. It's crazy. And then we have Philip Hansen in sixth place, desperate now, needing for points after the sprint. Simon Pagenaud in seventh place, Soho Van Dort in eighth, Paul de Resta in ninth, with Nick de Vries, who was our sprint pole, take it for in 10th place. And we have Rene Rast in 11th, Naoki Yamamoto in 12th, to see what he could do from there for Japan compared to his teammate who's already up in 3rd. And then Andre Lotto in 13th, Carl Larson in 14th, Joseph Newgarden in 15th, Dries Van Toor 16th, Sandy Stuvik in 17th, Robin Franz in 18th, Daniel Yokadea in 19th, James Collard in 20th, Alfred Adams in 21st, Natalie D. Wentala-Barragul in 22nd, Jack Aitken in 23rd, Alex Stern in 24th, Ella Lloyd in 25th, and Max Hart starting in last. But he had a pretty good race in the sprint considering where he started. Let's see if we can do that again. And to do that, let me hand you back to Ryan Ferris for the final race of the day.
Here we are for the final race of the weekend. It's the Division 1 feature race, and it's a lockout for Team New Zealand with Van Gisbergen on pole and Dixon in second. It's lights out, and away we go here for one final time here in Fuji. It was a good getaway at first for Van Gisbergen, but Dixon has taken the lead now. Who's this coming down the inside? It's one of the England cars, and that's Hansen going up into third position. Palou in fourth, and Rast in fifth, so third, fourth and fifth, all championship contenders. Now here's Van Dorn with what looks to be a bit of an issue. Yes, he's lost his front wing. So what was looking to be a promising race for the Belgian driver is already gone to pots in the first corner, or before the first corner. So he's going to have to limp back to pit lane. All the field swarming around him, and we saw earlier on with Robin Frines having an issue. There's smoke up ahead. I think someone's had a bit of a lock-up. So we see, oh no, who's this? Nick de Vries, and it's the pair of them. The two Dutch drivers off. And what's happened here? So off goes the track. Off of the track is one Dutch car. And joining in sympathy, it's Frines. So de Vries and Frines both off at the same time. This is somewhat fairly comical here. Yeah, and he makes the exact same mistake as his teammate did just up ahead. And synchronised reversing there from the Dutch team. Oh, and he's damaged his car for good measure. So where we were saying how it was going to be a good start for Belgium and it's not worked out that well, it's gone even worse for the Netherlands. Back at the front, it is Scott Dixon who leads from Van Gisbergen. Hansen and Palou are very much in tow of Van Gisbergen. Rast, the current championship leader. And we also have Stuvik in second, but Stuvik having a terrible qualifying this weekend, not even appearing on the top 15 leaderboard at the moment. But Palou and Hansen also very, very close. The top 5 at the moment in the championship, as you may have seen earlier, is 9 points between the top 5. The other driver just on in 5th position of the championship is Yamamoto. Currently sat in 12th position, but he's going to hope he can do a better job here on home soil. Team willing Scott Dixon on after a brilliant start. Great getaway. It looked like Van Gisbergen had the jump, but it just seemed in that second phase Dixon had the job done. Talking of job done, that is Pagenaud up the inside of Kobayashi for 7th position down at the Dunlop chicane. Further on up, it's Sebastian Bourdais, 6th position, and he's trying to catch up onto the back end of Rast for this battle for effectively 2nd position. Dixon gradually eking out the lead. What's it going to be as they cross the line once again? So across the line, it's 1.2 seconds between Dixon and teammate Van Gisbergen. Van Gisbergen also with a bit of a gap to Hansen behind. And then it's Pillow, Rast, and as you can see in the background, Bourdais trying to catch up onto the back of these guys. Interestingly, there's Evans in 14th, so good showing so far in the early stages from the Welsh driver. And here's a move here down the inside. Rast thinking of a move on Pillow, but not quite close enough to get the job done. There's smoke in the background, and that looks to be, I think that might be Lotterer. It's either that or a Belgium car. So I just saw a plume of smoke. I thought it was a lockup at first, but that seemed very substantial, and it is indeed Lotterer with an engine fire. So retirement there for Lotterer. Points lost there for Germany. Germany in contention at the moment for the team's title. So it all comes down to Rast in today's race for points. Back on board with Van Gisbergen, and obviously Dixon still eking out that lead. 1.7 seconds is the gap after 3 laps. Van Gisbergen in a fairly comfortable position at the moment ahead of Hansen. And it's looking like, from what the team radio is saying, they're going to be pitting late. Here's a battle there for 12th position, so Evans up into 12th, promoted a position as a result of Lotterer having the retirement, but he's fighting now with Larson. I think he's also managed to get through on Van Thor, so Evans gradually making his way up through the field. Here's Hansen Pillow, and this is Rast under pressure now from Bourdais, and Bourdais goes down the inside into turn 1, and that's a good move there by the French driver. He obviously has the pace in these early stages. And some may believe that he might be running on a lighter fuel load, so he's going to have a shorter first stint, but it looks like Rast isn't quite done yet. Dixon just starting to steady the pace now. He's not quite pulling away from his teammate at the rate of knots he was originally, but someone else who is still motoring along is Bourdais, as he's already got Pillow in his sights. Bourdais probably thinking he should be in this championship battle. But the car just hasn't worked for him. The reliability of that French car not been the best, obviously, with the double DNF, and there looks to be smoke up ahead again. I don't know if that was just a lockup. I think it was just a lockup. So here's Hansen struggling to keep up with the pace of Van Gisbergen, and that's Pagenaud now up the inside of Rast, so I can only imagine that Rast is on a very heavy fuel load. Van Gisbergen still a couple attempts a lap off of teammate Dixon, but still going at a pace fast enough to be pulling away from Hansen. So Hansen in a fairly lonely third position, although Pelot's not too far behind. Here's Stubik trying to find a way through on teammate Lee Watanabe. Kobayashi with a lock up there. It's an easy corner to do that sort of thing on. It's uphill and also turning at the same time, so very, very easy with the change of direction to snatch a break. Here is Pelot defending from Bourdais, so Bourdais has managed to bridge that gap to the Spanish driver. And indeed, the French cars are fast, but are they reliable today? Pelot still hanging on to that fourth position, unable to mount a challenge to Hansen. It looked like he was going to, but Hansen's either found a little bit more pace, or Pelot's just not quite got the pace in this early phase of the race as Bourdais tries to have a look down the inside. Wasn't quite close enough, and that's now put him into the clutches of his teammate Pagenaud. And Pagenaud hasn't quite dropped Rast yet, still within a second is the German driver. So Pelot comes out the final corner. He's pulled a bit of a gap to Bourdais. Obviously Bourdais, with that failed attempt on a move, has cost him a little bit of time in that final sector. So down the straight they come. No moves yet. Still happily out in the lead is Dixon. Here's James Collado down in 18th position, still not quite had the pace in that English car ever since he had his race ban. But Hansen has refound the pace that he had in the early races, had a bit of a lull for a few races, but it seems like he's back on form and back in a position to continue to fight for this championship. He had led this championship for quite some time. Here's Hart now having a look down the inside of Collado, but again, you've got to be very, very close to get the move done into this chicane. Hansen still running 2 seconds or 2.4 seconds ahead of Pelot. Now here's Yamamoto, who's fallen down to 10th, and he's going up through into 9th position ahead of DeResta. Actually, my apologies, Yamamoto was further down the order, so he's gradually making his way up through the order. He's now got Kobayashi to deal with, his teammate, who's had early pace, but it seems that that pace has gradually started to fall away, and Yamamoto's potentially been looking after his tyres in the early few laps, and he's now starting to push a bit harder on those tyres as he comes towards the end of this stint. I believe the first pit stops were roughly lap 13 or around that area. Bourdais with a lock-up ahead of Pagenaud. Still pushing hard and within a second of Pelot. Half a second it is at the moment. And that half a second, although possibly grown a little bit because of that lock-up. down the start finish straight, and Bourdais is definitely closing on below, but he's not going to be close enough, surely, to make a move. He's going to have a look anyway, and he goes down the inside of the Spaniard, but Palou hangs it out around the outside, which is going to be the inside for the next corner, but he's managed to get the job done and hold on to that position for the time being. This is allowing Hansen to get away, as Bourdais looks to be getting a bit flustered and a bit frustrated now, going for a move in a place where you definitely wouldn't normally go for one, and that's now allowed teammate Pagenaud to be all over the back of him. As Pagenaud has already pointed out, Rast is definitely quick through this middle section where it's a lot more technical and requires more downforce, but as soon as he gets onto the straight, he just can't hold a candle to these two French cars. And by making that rash manoeuvre into turn 2 for Bourdais, he's now lost touch with Palou, so he's not going to have the slipstream down this straight, so this is going to put him very vulnerable to Pagenaud behind. You can see there, even in the slipstream, Rast has just lost 2, maybe 3 car lengths to the cars ahead. And there's Pagenaud having a look down the inside of Bourdais, but not able to make the job done. In the meantime, Bourdais has closed back onto Palou. Still, Dixon increasing advantage. It's 3.6 seconds now to Van Gisbergen. And Van Gisbergen near 4.5 seconds ahead of Hansen now. Smoke ahead, and it's Hansen. So that's why Hansen engine blowout for one of the championship contenders. So very much like the Division 2 race, where the championship was altered quite a bit due to reliability. We're starting to see it again here, with Hansen being our first major retirement. So 11 laps completed of the 33. Dixon still leads from Shane Van Gisbergen, and now we have Alex Palou in 3rd position. But for how long, as Bourdais now sends it down the inside into turn 1 and takes that 3rd position from the Spaniard. Now, can he have the pace? He definitely does have the pace to get away from Palou. But is it a bridge too far already for the French driver to catch on to the 2 New Zealand cars ahead? Obviously, with it being a feature race, we're going to be seeing pit stops sometime soon. You can already see the pace advantage as Pagenaud tries down the inside of Palou, but Palou thinks better of it. Slams the door shut on the French driver, and that's allowed him to find himself under pressure now from René Rast, who's definitely got the car through these tight twisty sections, but once again, he'll come round onto that start-finish straight and he'll just have no pace whatsoever. At the same time, Kamui Kobayashi catching up on to this group, and he's turning along teammate Yamamoto. You can just see in the slipstream there, he's already lost 2 or 3 car lengths. Pagenaud looking again, and a bit of a lock-up there, so... And it's Bourdais! So it wasn't a lock-up, it's the car failing once again, and I did say Team France definitely had the pace, but did they have the reliability? And that is your answer. So 1 car out already, it's all down to Pagenaud. And that's a lock up there for Dixon there. Still continuing on board with race leader Dixon, but now it's Alex Palou, third position. Yamamoto is looking for the undercut, and he's going to pit this time round. Is whether or not he's going to come out in traffic, but that's the main thing, as we see Lee Wataragu being overtaken by Hart. That was for 15th place and the final point at the moment. And Hart coming from last position up into 15th. That's good going so far. Still plenty left of this race to go, as Pagenaud now goes down the inside of Palou, but once again unable to get the job done first time round. Palou hangs on to that position. That brings Rast into play, and Palou again, much like Bourdais, trying out of frustration to perform a move that's just not going to happen. Rast now all over the back end of Palou. Here's Van Gisbergen, nearly 4 seconds off the back of teammate Dixon, but many seconds, some 11 seconds ahead of Palou. And Palou having to deal with Pagenaud, who is once again gradually catching up onto the back end of the Spanish vehicle. And here's Collado trying it on down the inside of Lee Wataragu. Rast pushing for the team to perform the undercut, as he appears or feels that he can't get anywhere further. So the team have listened to what he's wanted and have brought him in for an early pit stop at what is now 14 laps completed, and I did say it was going to be roughly around 13 laps where we'll start seeing the first pit stops. Here's done down the inside of Danny Unkadea, but unable to get through this time. Here's Ella Lloyd behind James Collado. This is the battle for 12th, 13th and 14th, as you've got Lee Wataragu just up ahead of Collado. Still dominating at the moment, Dixon, 4.6 seconds to Van Gisbergen. As I say that, Dixon out of the race. Another car failure for New Zealand, and it's another suspension failure. That gives the lead to Van Gisbergen. So Dixon out of the race again. Here's Robin Freund moving his way back through the field, obviously recovering from that early spin. He goes through into 15th position. But shock here for New Zealand. That's promoted Palou into second and Pagenaud into third. So at the moment, out of the top guys, is here's Drithan Thor in 6th position, battling with Paul di Resta for 5th. Here's Alex Dunn behind Freund, so Freund has moved up into 14th position now. Here's Stoffel Van Dorn down the back end of the field. obviously trying to catch up as a result of the first lap incident. Palou now being told to box to cover off Yamamoto. Now, some breaking news that we had in the paddock this weekend, as the team owner of the Belgium team has decided to step down from their leadership position, so Belgium is open for someone to come along and take the helm. Belgium's just been a team of recent that has been gradually building and building. They didn't have the best of driver lineups at the start of the season, but changes were made to the lineup, and they definitely appear to be a much stronger team at the moment. So Belgium at the moment without a manager. It would be a shame for the team that has got quite a lot of opportunities up ahead and a bright future to go by the wayside. Meanwhile, Kobayashi, third position. He's wanting to pit, and he moves along to the side and comes into his pit box. Also just up ahead, Van Gisbergen and Pagenaud pitting from the lead. Some drivers opting to carry on. Evans now takes the lead ahead of Hart, Van Gisbergen, Lee Wataragu third, Collado is fourth, Dunn's fifth, and Van Gisbergen eventually comes out in sixth position. Yamamoto up into seventh position, and he's managed to leapfrog both Rast and Pagenaud. So it seemed like the team had managed to find the right window to slot him into. We did see earlier in the Division 2 race that the undercut didn't quite work because of the traffic. But here is Hart chasing down Evans for the lead. Obviously, the current top 5 yet to stop. But you should expect to see him in some point between here and around lap 21, lap 22. Rast now ahead of Palou, so this would be interesting. Obviously, as we know, that Team Germany car does not have the best of straight line speed, so this should be easy pickings for Team Spain, but not really closing at the rate that you'd expect to see, as Dunn and Collado now pit. Rast goes slightly on the defensive on Palou, but Palou somehow unable to get through. Here's Hart catching Evans. Lee Wataragu in the background for third. But obviously it won't be the case for too much longer. And that's a lock up there for Juncadella. Down in 17th position is the Spanish driver. De Vries is into pit lane, so that will cycle in towards the back end of the field, and indeed it does. But these guys who are running a bit longer at the front, it does mean that they will have better tyres to deal with in the second part of the race. That was James Collado just going through on Robin Frines for position. But here is towards the front, Van Gisbergen in second position. Hart hasn't pitted yet, but Evans has, and so has Lee Wataragu. That's promoted Stuvik up into 8th position. Another driver fighting for that title. Here's Van Dorn. So, no. That's Drisan Thor. 9th position, sandwiched between the Thai cars. But meanwhile, Van Gisbergen chasing down Hart. And down the inside on Rennie Rast goes Pagenaud, so he's had enough of following the championship leader. He feels he's got far more pace and he's now got to find his way through on Alex Palou. Further on back, Collado trying to find a way through on Lloyd. Yamamoto, through running a brilliant undercut strategy, has now found himself in 3rd position. And it looks as though Hart has now pitted, unless he's come into some technical issues. And indeed, he has pitted. Battles further on down the order. And that's Lee Watanabe going through on Alex Dunn. Actually, no, it's going through on Frines as we see Hart just coming out of pit lane, and that's kind of taken Lee Watanabe's line of sight off away a bit and caused him to lock up. Stuvik up into 7th position at the moment, but under pressure now from Van Thor. And Van Thor trying down the inside here, it looks like. No, he thinks better of it, tucks in behind the Thai driver. Further on at the front, and the battle rages on for 2nd position. But further on back, this is the battle we're looking at here. Stuvik in 7th position, chased down by Drisan Thor. Newgarden isn't too far behind these two either, so if they do start bickering, the American driver will be joining the mix. Here's Pagenaud. Still holding on to that 3rd position, ahead of Palou. Rast has been near enough dropped by these guys, but he's still hanging on in there. And all the while, they're still trying to catch up on Yamamoto, who has done a brilliant job, and in fact the team has done a brilliant job to allow him to find himself in the position he's in at the moment, and that's 2nd position. So here is Sandy Stuvik losing out there by Van Thor, and Thor goes down the inside into the Dunlop chicane there, so he's going to have to push real hard through this final sector to try and build up the gap. And that should hopefully mean he is safe come turn 1, which is quite a way away out of this final corner. Meanwhile, back towards the front, Yamamoto within slipstream distance now. Or Pagenaud now within slipstream distance of Yamamoto. Still, at the front is Van Gisbergen. He's now got a lead of 9.7 seconds to Yamamoto. But he is on board at the moment with Larson. And not really been able to put on the level of performance some people have expected to see from the American driver, the driver that has been touted by many to be just as diverse as Max Verstappen, and I think with recent performances from Verstappen. He's going to say otherwise, as we see Juncadella just being passed by Hart, who's on the fresh tyres now. Next opponent on Hart's list is Jack Aitken. The rest are not too far ahead of that either. Meanwhile, back at the front is Yamamoto, now under pressure from Simon Pagenaud. Pagenaud tucked up behind the Japanese driver. But Yamamoto a little bit more wise to Pagenaud's ways, but is Pagenaud going to have a look coming down to the Dunlop chicane? It seems to be a favourite position for overtakes. And indeed he is trying, he's drawing it alongside, but the circuit does squeeze or narrow a little bit there, so he had to pull back in behind Yamamoto and was unable to launch an attack into the hairpins there and the chicane. But still, down the start-finish straight, and Pagenaud a lot closer now to Yamamoto, and he's drawing alongside. Down the straight they come, drawing side by side, and Pagenaud cuts in front of Yamamoto, but Yamamoto is going to fight back into turn one, and indeed he does. Pagenaud tries to hang it out round the outside, but Yamamoto wires to that decision and takes that second position back off Pagenaud. But Pagenaud's going to have a rethink. Meanwhile, all the time as Pagenaud goes off! Off goes Pagenaud and into the wall! So Pagenaud pushing hard there to try and make a move on Yamamoto. He thought he had the move done, but Yamamoto fought back, and now he finds himself doing the exact same thing as what both the Dutch drivers did, but he was coming on, or went off the circuit at a far greater rate of knots. He's lost the front wheel, and that is now yet again a double DNF for France. Here's Kobayashi trying to find a way through for rest. Palou now promoted up into third position. Here's Hart fighting with Evans. Evans down in 12th position behind Jack Aitken. Aitken having a reasonable showing this weekend. Here's Dunn trying to find his way up into the top 15. Meanwhile, here's Palou again, closing on Yamamoto but not closing fast enough. Rast now coming under pressure from Kobayashi into turn one as well. But it all is pretty much about the battle of the second here. Providing nothing goes wrong for Van Gisbergen, he's got a 13.8 second advantage over the rest of the field. So Palou still stalking Yamamoto for that second position. It's almost like he's pretty much waiting for an error from the Japanese driver. So around these final corners, and Palou definitely closer this time round to Yamamoto as they come through the final corner. Does he manage to get a good drive down the start finish straight? You see Yamamoto pulling a car length, but you may see in the second half of this straight Palou's going to start drawing closer, and you can see he's getting closer, and he's pulling out to go down the inside into turn one, but is unable to do so. So that Japanese car definitely has a bit of straight line speed. I think Polo thought he had the job done. Meanwhile, back at the front, 15.2 seconds is the lead for Van Gisbergen over Yamamoto in second. He's just going to be hoping, wishing, praying that the technical difficulties and gremlins that have been plaguing him all over the weekend do not hit him the same way as it did Dixon. Meanwhile, still, this battle for second position rages on between Yamamoto and Palou. They've managed to drop Rast now. Rast now pretty much going to find himself under pressure from Kobayashi. Down the start-finish straight we go again. Palou close to Yamamoto, but not close enough by the looks of things. Coming down into turn one, and what was pretty much nose to tail coming out the final corner has now become 3 or 4 car lengths. So here's Van Gisbergen, and he's going to find himself coming across some traffic now. Here is De Vries further on down the field, obviously trying to form some form of recovery drive, or just collecting some data. Not a single car in sight there until you have race leader coming up from behind. Here's Daniel Juncadella. Now he's managed to find his way up into 15th position, so he's scoring a solitary point. But here is Van Gisbergen, who's, since Dixon retiring with a suspension failure, has been fairly dominant with his pace. 16.8 seconds is the lead at the moment for Van Gisbergen to Yamamoto. Here's further on down the field. Juncadella 15th position, make that 16th position now I think, as Lee Wataragu promotes herself into 15th and the final points paying position. Still with a handful of laps left to go, he's going to be coming around the final corner and coming across the start finish straight to tick off another lap. Van Dorn still in a world of his own. Next car for pace is essentially many seconds behind, that's Frines, with a 13-second advantage, I think that is. Here's Rast, essentially playing a small job with Kobayashi staying ahead of Van Thorn. But Van Thorn having a good showing here for Team Belgium, 6th position behind Kobayashi. But it looks like he's not quite done yet. So downhill they come once again. I think Van Gisbergen definitely affected a little bit by this car he's trying to lap. I thought for a moment then for Stuvik that was an engine blowout, but it was just a slight lock-up. Hart in 10th position now, ahead of the Resta. So 3 laps to go. Still, Van Gisbergen leads by nearly 18 seconds to Yamamoto. Yamamoto staying ahead of Alex Palou. Van Gisbergen still closing in on some of the lap cars ahead. And Juncker with a lock-up into turn 1, that's going to allow Dunn to get just that little bit closer to the Spanish car, but the Spanish car definitely looks as though it's got some degree of pace. So it is Dries Thor in 5th position, running very well for Team Belgium. But still Kobayashi behind to come onto the start-finish straight. Seems like the Belgian car definitely has the drive out the corner, but is it going to be strong enough to hold on to that position ahead of Kobayashi? Possibly one of the more aggressive drivers on the grid. But this is the penultimate lap. Van Gisbergen just has to pretty much coast the car home at the moment with such an advantage of 18.3 seconds. Kobayashi still trying to find a way through on Van Thor on home soil. Meanwhile, Yamamoto, the general teammate who we thought wasn't going to be able to perform the same as Kobayashi, the old, clever and safe pair of hands, is quick, but some may argue not quite quick enough. But Yamamoto just reiterating that we knew the Kiwis were going to be quick today. It all pretty much came down to reliability, something they definitely didn't have in the sprint race. And here's Van Gisbergen finally managing to find a way through on Freins. Actually, De Vries, my apologies. But that has cost him a little bit of time on this final lap, but not too much time, as long as the car behind doesn't do anything too silly. Yamamoto has pretty much left Palou behind, and Palou's going to be coming across the line in 3rd position, although it's not over yet, as we've seen with previous races, Monza being the main one to go by. But around the final corners, Shane Van Gisbergen just has one final corner to deal with, and down that start-finish straight. Any issues now, he's sure going to be able to be limping the car over the line. A commanding and dominant victory here for Shane Van Gisbergen of New Zealand. And that's some precious points. Could have definitely been better if it weren't for the earlier retirement. But confirmation there. Shane Van Gisbergen winning. Yamamoto comes over next with Pato Award in 3rd, René Rast 4th, and Van Thor in 5th position, which was a great showing there by the Belgian driver. More cars stream across the line. And here is Lee Wataragu as we still wait for the rest of the field to come on through. Here's Stoffel van Dorn, and he's going to take checkered flag. But after that race, confirmation here of Shane van Gisbergen, the winner here, with Yamamoto in second position. More important points for the Japanese driver, ahead of Alex Palou and Rene Rast, both drivers also vying for that top spot in the championship. Dries van Thor finished 5th with Kobayashi in 6th, Larsen 7th, Stuvik 8th, Newgarden in 9th, and Max Hart rounding out the top 10. Paul di Resta and Jack Aitken were 11th and 12th, with Elvin Evans in 13th. James Collado came across the line in 14th, with Lee Watanabe taking the final points there in 15th position. Daniel Juncadere finished 16th, ahead of Alex Dunn in 17th, Robin Frijns in 18th, and Ella Lloyd in 19th. Stoffel van Dorn finished 20th, ahead of Nick de Vries, who was a lap down in 21st. Then we go on to the retirements. Double DNF once again for Team France, with Simon Pagenaud and Sebastian Bourdais. Scott Dixon went out of the lead with a suspension failure, and Philip Hansen having issues, as well as Andre Lotterer. And after that final race of the day, it is back over to Chris to come up with the point standings.
A brilliant drive there from Shane van Gisbergen once again, and also Scott Dixon with another retirement. It's gut-wrenching for him now because it's really hampering his championship hopes. But what a great drive from the New Zealander, and again Naoki Yamamoto just puts his car in the right place and did everything for Japan, as well as Kabuki Kobayashi. A very, very solid race indeed. And how about Max Hart, starting from last in both events and pretty much getting to 10th place, I believe, each time. What a fantastic drive. So let's see how the standings look. And Rene Rast is in the lead still, but by only 1 point to Shane van Gisbergen. And both Alex Palou and Naoki Yamamoto are only 2 off Rene Rast. How close is this? And then Sandy Stuvik, despite having you could call it a interesting / bad weekend, is still only 8 points away. How crazy. And then Philip Hansen in 6th with 88 points. And then Nick de Vries 86 points. Been a fairly good event despite the synchronised spinning they did with Robin Frijns in 86 points. And then Simon Pagenaud with the sprint win on 75. Joseph Newgarden 72. Paul di Resta 70 points. Scott Dixon not helped by retirements on 68 points. Kamui Kobayashi on 62. Kyle Larson on 57 points, and then Stoffel van Dorn as well on 57 points. Sebastian Bourdais 54, remains unchanged from Monza, very gut-wrenching for him. Daniel Juncadere on 54 as well. Alex Dunn on 53, Andre Lotterer 45, Dries van Toor 45, Elvin Evans 43, Jack Aitken 42, Max Hart 31 points. Very good drive from him today. Robin Frijns 29, James Collado with 23, Natalie Livatana-Farragut on 21, Mick Schumacher on 11 points, Ella Lloyd also on 11, Tadej Makina at 5, Lavi ten Voile on 3, Mark Wilson's 1, and then Ugo Chokwu, Lin and X all on 0. So what does it mean now for the constructors? New Zealand, only by 2 points, lead the championship with 173 ahead of Japan. And then Germany are 11 points behind, with Spain 15 points behind. It's getting very, very dicey, and there's still lots of racing to go. And then France and the USA are tied on 129 points. Thailand on 119, Netherlands 118, Scotland 112, England 111. And you can see there the red line, that's the relegation line. And it's oh so close between a lot of nations. Belgium are 11th in that relegation zone so far with 103. And Ireland at 84 points, and Wales with 54 points. All to play for still. So that is now 8 rounds done and 7 to go. Over halfway, and things are very, very close and dicey. We're in for one hell of a championship. And the championship will head on to Vietnam now, to Hanoi. Same day, same time, in a fortnight's time. It's going to be very interesting to see racing around there, having there been, well, it's a new venue. We've not ever been there before, so very interesting to see how things go there for the cars and what setups people choose. but that is 2 weeks away. Thank you so much for watching this race. I'm hoping that you enjoyed it. It's been one hell of a crazy set of races. I have been your host, Chris Cavaney. Ryan Ferris has been your commentator, and this is the Retro Racing Managers League signing off.